What's up everybody, it's Victon here with my final build update / guide for my Ice Spear and Freezing Pulse Totems boss killer. So I've come full circle in builds this league, playing this build to start, which allowed me to farm some early bosses and get a ton of currency, and since then I've kind of been trying a couple different builds, but man, nothing compares to the crazy power this build has. I actually had sold this build about a week ago to fund some of my other projects, but recently decided to buy the full build again. This time I went straight to the maxed out version. So this is actually a pretty accurate build cost at week 3 of the league. I spent just about 100 divines to get the damage you're seeing in the gameplay showcase. And actually earlier in the league you can get these items typically a little bit cheaper than I got them for here. That's 100 divines spent for 300 million DPS. With that level of DPS, some of these uber pinnacle bosses can literally instantly be killed, completely skipping the fight entirely. It turned out to be an absolute beast of a boss killer, and it's probably the best one that I've actually ever played, and in my opinion, probably number 1 or 2 best bossing builds out in the game right now. It had such a smooth and cheap league start, with me killing my first Shaper on a 4-link with level 18 gems and only about 100 chaos investment in my gear. Up to now, where I'm doing every single uber pinnacle boss in the game effortlessly and farming uber Shaper and Sanctums for the bulk of my currency making strat. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention that it's possibly one of the best Sanctum farmers out in the game too. Being Totems, you can have a very safe playstyle progressing through the rooms, and getting to the bosses, you just instantly kill them. Even the final boss, she literally just falls over when she gets hit by a single Ice Spear projectile. I'd even say this is a contender for a no-hit run Sanctum farming build. All that said, even at my 300 million DPS for 100 divines spent, there's still more we can do, and we're going to get all the way up to 600 million DPS for 200 divines spent on gear. And that's what we're going to be doing in this video. We're going to be talking about a build that my buddy put together, Bronca. His is the fully maxed out version of the build. We're pretty sure he has the #1 Ice Spear DPS in the game right now, so I figured it was time to share the knowledges and give you guys the juicy build details. I'll link my current POB in the description as well as his, so check out those depending on how much currency you kind of want to sink into the build. I will also be going over how to craft all of the items in the build for any of you guys looking to save some currency and craft the items yourself. If you do like this build but want to start the build out on a budget, I'm going to link my League Starter version of the build as well, so check that out if you want to get started. And with all that being said, before we get going, if this guide or any of my other content helps you out in any way, please hit those like and subscribe buttons and leave a comment saying what your favorite build of the league has been so far. If you're really enjoying my content and want to support my channel, consider taking a look at my Patreon, where I have a super helpful community Discord and actually personally do build reviews on there all the time as well. I also stream on Twitch occasionally, so if you ever see me online, feel free to hit me up with any questions you might have. The link for all of that is going to be in the video description. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop straight into the path of buildings. Alright, and here we are in my path of building. So we're going to talk about my path of building first, and then we'll go over Bronca's path of building for that 600 million DPS afterwards, because there's actually not too many changes from his build to my build. His is just, of course, maxed out a little bit more, and it's small changes for massive gains. So let's talk about my POB here. Now, this is not going to be a full guide, so if you guys are interested in a full guide, I already do have a couple guides out. Like I said, I do have the League Starter version of this, and I do have what I call like an in-game version, which is pretty much where most people will be, but this is the min-maxed version. So basically what I'm going to do in this version is just talk about the differences between my in-game version and this maxed out version. So I just don't want to, catch you guys up on that one. I want you guys to understand that before we get going. So yeah, here we go. So we have, this is a change now. So we have a Militant Faith Jewel, which is pretty solid. It's going to do a couple things for us. So first off, 4% increased elemental damage, 4% totem damage. So that's basically 40% LE, 40% totem damage. It's also giving us a ton of dexterity, which is helping. We do need 159 dexterity total for the build, so getting this is very important. One thing I did want to mention though is when you're buying something like this, make sure that it does not change any of these nodes around here. because if it does, you're going to lose a lot of damage, right? So if it, like, for some reason takes this node off, because it could give you something like, you know, +1 a maximum power charge if you have 150 devotion. It could change that node into that, which is actually bad, because then we lose, you know, whatever's on there. So you don't want to do that. But here's also the more important part here. So we have Inner Conviction, 3% more spell damage per power charge, and we do have 4 power charges minimum, so we will have 12% more spell damage with this node, which is very solid for just one node. So yeah, we picked that up pretty solid here. We have changed our large cluster here just a little bit. I did craft this myself. I do think it is smart to craft your large clusters yourself instead of buying them. You could snipe one for a decent you know, a decent price, but I like crafting them myself because alteration orbs are so cheap right now. And the reason I do it myself is because you can usually hit a third mod pretty easily. So for example, this is how I crafted this one. You know, you alteration spam it. I hit the 3 all element resistances, which is a good one, so it's something that I actually like. So like I would have kept, like, you know, maybe a tier 1 dexterity or a tier 1 life, you know, anything that's decent like that. And then you augment it, and I hit that 3% increased attack speed with cold skills, which was very good, and I was pretty excited. And then you have to regal it and hope that you hit that 35%, which is very hard. But like I said, alterations are super cheap, so it's really not too bad. And you can usually end up with 3 pretty good nodes there: the 35%, the 3%, and then a pretty decent third one. And then you just, you know, exalt slam it and hope you hit something good. Now the reason that's so good is because the 35% actually turns that 3% cast speed into 4% cast speed. So 4% cast speed is absolutely bonkers. It actually makes this cluster give you 40% cast speed, which is crazy. And that 12% increased cold damage actually turns into 16% cold damage. So really, really nice. Now, for me, it was also very important to get that elemental resistances on there, because we are using Annihilating Light, which we'll talk about here shortly, but that really hurts your resistances in this build. So we're trying to get as much resistances as possible. So it is definitely advised to try and get some resistances on your cluster. So yeah, we hit that. Our medium clusters have not changed. We just have Eye to Eye Repeater, and the other one we have Ancestral Echo and Sleepless Sentries. As far as the tree, I think that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and move on to our skills. Not too crazy of changes in here, but we have made a couple changes. Now, I do not have Awakened GMP. It's very expensive, and I haven't felt that I need it. But it is a ton of extra damage. Basically, the difference between regular GMP up to Awakened GMP is you're getting an extra projectile, and projectile is the #1 way to get extra damage with this build. Projectile first, cast speed second, crit multi third. So yeah, I don't have that, but it's okay. I'm still doing 304 million DPS, and I'm chilling. One nice thing this league is the Awakened gems are actually super cheap. Like the regular one's obviously not an Awakened GMP, but you know, something like this, Awakened Added Cold, even a level 5, you can buy this straight up for like 80 chaos. Very cheap. And then for also at this point in the league, you know, getting 2120 gems is also relatively cheap, you know, anywhere between 25-50 chaos, not too bad. So I would definitely suggest you guys snag some of those for some extra damage. And so we did change this. We're going with 2120 Ice Spear regular instead of Phantasmal. I played around with it a lot, and I actually like the projectile speed more. I think it actually somehow helps the damage, just because I think I don't know, it's hard to explain, but trust me, trust me, it's also a lot cheaper too. The Phantasmal 2120 is pretty expensive, but the default I think is the way to go, and it's a lot cheaper. Cool. Moving on to our weapon here, we do have Annihilating Light, like I said, so that allows us to have a second 6 link, which is very nice because we're able to get 4 curses in here as well as an enhance with on an Arcanist brand. So you throw out 1 Arcanist brand and it curses all 4 curses for you, and it's just super buffed with the enhance, which is really, really good. So the enhance basically on all of these curses is just adding curse effect. And the reason we're doing 4 curses is because of this ring right here, the Anathema ring. Your curse limit is equal to your maximum power charge. Because we are Hierophant, we do have 4 maximum power charges. And they're always up as well. So we have 4 minimum as well. So we always have 4 curses. And Curses are absolutely crazy this league. The reason being is because they changed it so that the curse effectiveness is full on bosses. It used to be to where, you know, if you're cursing a boss, it got reduced effectiveness. I think it was like 60 or 40% reduced effectiveness, and it was really bad. But this league, they've changed it, and it's now very, very good. This ring and a 4 curse setup is now better than Omniscience. So really, really good, and obviously you're saving a lot on not having to buy Omniscience and Omniscience gear, and it's more damage. So all around, pretty good win there. And for our curses here, we do have Elemental Weakness, Sniper's Mark, Frostbite, and Punishment. For our buffs here, nothing crazy. We do have Lightning Golem Anomalous, just for a little bit extra cast speed. And now I do put Culling Strike on my Lightning Golem because I do boss a lot on this character, and having that Culling Strike is pretty nice because it's going to save you a couple kills here and there, just because it's going to cull those bosses. It's pretty nice. Nothing too crazy there. You could honestly, you know, maybe remove that, and you could do like a Cast on Death portal setup if you wanted. I did that as well for a while. Mainly if you're doing like really hard maps, but if you're just doing bosses, you obviously don't need that because you're actually never going to die because you instantly kill the bosses anyway. So I would do, you know, a setup like that. Turn of Blessing, Zealotry. Now this one is new. Cold Snap, Unbound Ailments, Bone Chill. Now the reason we're doing this is because we're going to, basically the setup is that you're going to Arcanist Brand. You're going to spawn all your totems. You're going to get a bunch of curses on you, so you're doing a whole bunch of damage. And then you're going to throw out your Arcanist Brand, and then right after the Arcanist Brand, you're going to hit it with a Cold Snap. And when you hit it with Cold Snap right under the boss, it's going to leave like a little cold zone underneath it, and it's going to make it take more cold damage. So that's pretty nice. So check this out. That alone is about 30 million DPS. So pretty good little change there. And of course, just, you know, regular Flame Dash. And that's it for the skills. Nothing too crazy. I would say the craziest thing that we have changed was just the fact that we now have a 6-link, so we're able to get, you know, the 6-link curse setup with enhance. It's just really, really good. So check this out. Look, we have 304 million DPS. If I take out all the curses, we're down to 85 million DPS. That is how crazy curses are. Absolutely bonkers. That's why it's better than Omniscience right now. Cool. Moving on to the items, and of course where the bulk of the changes is, and a lot of the bulk of where you're going to spend your money to min-max this build. So Annihilating Light is definitely best in slot. We're going to be doing that instead of 2 wands. Now Annihilating Light makes you deal triple elemental damage, which is obviously insane, but at the cost of insane reduced elemental resistances. So you're going to see it's going to be evident on all of our gear. We're going to try and get as much resistances on our gear because you have to make up for it. And I think I'm actually not even capped on cold, but like I said, it really doesn't even matter because I'm just doing bosses, and bosses instantly die anyway, so it doesn't even make a difference. But yeah, you still do want to at least try and get as much resistances as possible. The best implicit that you can get on there is cast speed. I think it goes up to 15%. These are not too expensive. They're like, you know, somewhere between 8 and 15 divines, depending on the market. I would definitely suggest buying a non-6-link version and then 6-linking it yourself with Tainted Jewelers, Tainted Fusings. It's a lot cheaper to do that. Moving on to our helmet here. We are actually not using a Blizzard Crown. We're using a regular helmet here. And the reason being is because the Eater and Exarch implicits are just too good with the cast speed and Cold Pin. Now again, the most important thing here is actually the Ice Spear fires an additional projectile. Like I said at the beginning, you know, projectiles, extra projectiles is the most damage that you can add. So that's the most important thing, is to at least get element with that. And then from there, you just want as much life and resistance as possible. I personally probably would have liked another resistance instead of that dexterity, but I'll take the dexterity. It did help me cap out. Now, if you can get an open prefix, that is best case scenario because you can craft on there projectiles pierce an additional target. It is definitely advised to get at least one of these on your gear, so you can at least have one pierce, because when you're doing bosses that have adds, it helps clear those adds out while also kind of dealing damage to the boss a lot if you're able to at least get one pierce. So pretty good helmet, and it's a lot cheaper than doing a Blizzard Crown, and you can craft this yourself pretty easily by just, you know, doing essences. And yeah, you're chilling. Pretty easy helmet. For your body armor, the best implicit corruption that you're going to want to get is +2 to level socketed projectile gems. It is a ton of extra damage. That's going to cost you, I think this one specifically cost me 8 divine, because it also came with reduced extra damage from critical strikes, which you don't really need. You could get a +2 for I think maybe 3 to 5 divines and then link it yourself. And also do remember, guys, that you can use tainted chromatic orbs to get the correct colors on your gear as well. So don't be afraid if it's got like crappy colors. Just choose tainted chromatic orbs. I think it's 12 average chromatic orbs to get green, 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 red, blue, blue. So yeah, that is mine. And when we see Brodka's, you're gonna see the best one is obviously, you know, the +2 and +1, so it's double corrupt. So we'll see that here in a second when we talk about his build. Moving on to the gloves, we really just want as much resistances as possible here with increased damage with hits against chilled enemies. Now when I purchased these, it had crappy prefixes, like it didn't even have good prefixes at all, but that's actually okay because you can use the Eater of the Worlds and the Exarch to make it, you know, one's dominant, one's less dominant, and then you use the Eldritch currency, so you know, Eldritch Chaos Orb, you just spam those until you maybe hit like a, you know, a really good life roll. You can use Eldritch Annulments, Eldritch Exalteds, so I spammed Eldritch Chaos Orbs until I get that tier 1 or the tier 1 hybrid, and then I just crafted life on there and called it. Most importantly though is those implicits at the top there. So inflict cold exposure on hit, which is very good, and you can actually use the lesser ones to get that 15% chance to unnerve enemies on hit. Even at 15%, because we have so many ice spears going off, it's going to be permanently up on the enemy. So yeah, saves some currency there, and you only have to get lesser. Those two are very important. It's a lot of damage. These gloves are quite a bit of damage. Boots here are actually pretty basic boots. I think these were only like a few divine that I bought them for. You're really just trying to get as much life, resistances, and move speed as possible. And as you can tell here, I got 35% plus 7%, and then a little bit of avoided elements. Not a huge deal. I think the move speed is probably the better one there. If you really wanted to, you could get like increased damage per endurance charge as an implicit there, but it's only about like 20 to 24% increased damage. It's nothing too crazy. I went with the quality of life instead. That's just what I like. But yeah, the boots are pretty cheap. Just get as much resistances, life, and move speed as possible. Now for the amulet, this is a big boy amulet, and I don't even have the big boy version of this amulet. It's still pretty big, but Brodka's amulet's even crazier. We'll talk about that one in a second. But what I'm going to do is, I was thinking about including how to craft this in this guide, but what I'm going to do is actually just make like one of those little YouTube shorts on how to craft this amulet specifically. So I'll link that in the description for you guys. It'll come out when this video comes out, so it will be there. So if you're interested in learning how to craft this, check that out. The total cost for me to craft this one specifically was 8 divines. I think probably on average it's going to take you between 10 and 15 divines. I got pretty lucky. And to craft the God amulet, it's going to cost somewhere between 15 and 25 for the God amulet. But yeah, this amulet is actually bonkers. It is so much damage. Like I said, it's way more damage than Omniscience, and it's way cheaper than Omniscience as well. For Anoint, I got Mark the Prey, which is nothing too crazy. It's just 10% more damage, but I did want to mention that. It is very important, though, to get this on a Citrine amulet, because you do need that dex and that strength. So do remember that, because like I said, you need 111 strength, you need 159 dex, so plan that accordingly when you do buy your base to craft on. For our first ring here, we basically just want to get as much elemental resistance as possible. Ideally, you want to get upwards of 180 to 200% elemental resistances on here with some life. That would be best case scenario. Don't look at that little 7% lightning resistance down there. He's sad. But yeah, so I had enough to be just fine. I obviously would have liked a little bit more, because then I probably could have not had uncapped cold res, but honestly it's totally fine. And if you have an extra prefix open, you can craft what I did there and just do a little bit extra flat damage, which is pretty nice. For our ring 2 here, now I do not have like a best in slot one. When we look at Brodka's build, we'll show you the best in slot one, but I can at least explain it now. So here's what you want to do for the Anathema. Again, we want the Anathema for the 4 curses. And what we're going to want to do is buy 14 or 15% cast speed rings. You're going to use imbued catalyst on them to get up to 20%. If you get a 15%, you can get that up to 18% with the catalysts. And then you're going to want to double corrupt it in the temple. And you're ideally looking for 2 of these 3 mods. You either want Zealotry effect, You want cast speed, or you want all elemental resistances. That's like the god ring right there. Obviously mine's not great, 4% dex and but it was the only one that didn't poof, so I'll take it. For our belt, nothing changed here. We're still using Coward's Legacy. The only thing I would suggest is definitely getting as much attributes as possible. You can use intrinsic catalyst to get that up to 20 all attributes, so I would suggest doing that if you can. Moving on to our flasks, our life flask didn't change, just a life flask with bleed immunity on it. The Lavianga Spirit didn't change, very good for mana regen. Bottled Faith, we are using a Bottled Faith. Most important role there is the 10% increased damage taken enemies. That is a more multiplier, so definitely try and get 10%. And we're going to want to use when charges are full, or you could do effect, I think it's what, 70% increased effect if you're only doing bosses. So I would suggest that if you're only doing bosses. And then we're going to have a diamond flask here with tier 1 cast speed and also increased effect. Same thing, if you're only doing bosses, I would suggest the enchant that is 70% increased effect, not charges when used when charges reach full. Now, Dying Sun is a ton of extra damage. Like, let's see, we're going to take it off. Yeah, we lose 50 million DPS. The reason being, like I mentioned, skills fire additional projectiles is the #1 way to increase damage in your build. So very good with the Dying Sun. And the rolls don't even matter on this, honestly. So one thing to note though is that if you are doing bosses, you could do instead of using when charges full, you do the 70% increase effect, and actually that skills fire 2 projectiles goes up to 3 projectiles, and you get even more damage. It's even crazier, so keep that in mind. For Watcher's Eye, the best in slot Watcher's Eye for the 1 passive is Consecrated Ground. Cause enemies to take 10% increased damage. That is very good. I was able to get a double one here. Actually, I got this for only 8 divine. It also came with cast speed as well. Pretty nice. We already talked about our clusters. This is a best in slot jewel that we could get, which is a 3 passive multi-jewel. You can do, critical strike multiplier, cold multiplier, elemental multiplier, and then cast speed. You can either get cast speed with cold skills or cast speed when you have a staff equipped. Those are the best in slot. Now here's where actually like most of my currency went, and don't even pay attention to the fact that it's green and it's a relic item. It was literally just the cheapest one possible, but unaffected by curses while affected by zealotry, and also 37% increased effective zealotry. It goes up to 40. So this basically just allows me to not have to care about curses. Obviously very good, but it's really not that necessary, because with the way the game is now, you can actually get jewels with up to 60% curse reduction on you. You can get 30% on the regular roll, and then you can get another 30% on the implicit roll, and those do exist. I used to have one that had like a double multi and 60 curse reduction on you, so literally you just need 2 of those jewels, and then the Soul of Yugal, if you capture that Pantheon, that's 30%. There you go, you're done. And the reason I say 150% is because you need to keep in mind the belt here. If you are using this belt, it's 50% increased effective curses on you, so you actually need 150% reduction of curses on you. If you're not using the belt, you only need 100. If you're using it, you need 150. But if you're going to get the Sublime Jewel, then none of that matters. You just get 1 jewel and it's done. But it's very expensive, and it's hard to even price this because there's so few of them. They sell for, like, they range so much. Like, I've seen them at 20 divines, I've seen them at freaking 80 divines, I've seen them at 50. I think I bought mine for 30. So they're just really all over the place. Self-flagellation, you of course want a 20% damage per curse on you. We have 9 curses on you, which is the max, so that's 180% increased damage, which is very good. You want a Rain of Splinters, of course. Again, that Totem Fire 2 additional projectiles is 50 million DPS. Now that reduced totem damage, don't worry too much. Like, you don't have to get like a perfect 30%. It's not that big of a deal at all. Like, you can even go up to, like, 36, 37, 38 and be totally fine. And these are not too expensive right now. In the beginning of the league, they were pretty expensive, but they're not too bad right now. So yeah, so that's 300 million DPS for my build, and I spent pretty much exactly 100 divines when I built this from scratch, like including gems, everything. And that was about 3 weeks into the league, and it literally one-shots bosses. Really, really good. But if you want to go even crazier, Here is the absolute maxed out version, 600 million DPS, and this is his actual build as well. There's no, you know, shenanigans going on there. I'll show you guys the configuration just so you can see. Yeah, and his build, I think his tree is actually the exact same as mine. Yeah, it's exactly the same as mine. As far as skills, very small differences here. He has Awaken Greater Multi Projectiles, like I said, that does give you one additional projectile, which is a lot of damage. He has Divergent Multiple Totems, which is only 10% totem damage, but of course, if you're min-maxing, definitely do it. He does this, which I thought was pretty interesting. He does Leap Slam, faster attacks, and Frostbite. So that's something you guys could consider, or not Frostbite, Frost Blink. So that's something you guys could consider instead of what I do, which is just, you know, Flame Dash. And I do that Culling Strike with my Golem as well. So yeah, and that's the only changes that he has for his gems. Where all of his damage is coming from is obviously in his gear here. He has Annihilating Light, same stat that I have. He has 1% increased cast speed that I have. His helmet, though, he does have perfect implicits, so it goes up to 6% cold resistances, shred, and 13 cast speed. Very, very good there. He has the God Body Armor, which is +2 projectiles, +1 socketed gems. Very, very good. And then everything else, those are the same. So he also has the God Amulet. So look at this, boys. So it's the tier 1 multi with the crit catalysts, which makes it go up to 45. He's got tier 1 cast speed, which goes up to 20. He also had an open prefix, which he was able to Veil Orb and get that proj speed, proj damage. And of course, he's got the +2 open suffix for that minimum frenzy charge. Crazy amulet. I think this cost him about 25 to 30. Well, he crafted many of these to finally get this one, but I think like if you aimed at getting something like this, it'll probably, and like you didn't sell them, like you just kept going, I think it'd probably cost you about 25 to 30 divines to craft it. You could probably easily sell it for, you know, 60 to 80 divines, no problem. But yeah, that is the God Amulet right there. For his ring, he also has a God Ring. It's got cast speed and zealotry effect. Absolutely crazy. I think, and he literally bought this for, well, I think 3 or 4 divine. I'm super jealous and feels bad for that guy. And I think pretty much the rest of his gear is exactly the same. He has a slightly different water design than me. Instead of a cast speed for that second one, he has critical strikes, penetrate, 8% elemental resistances. Yeah, and the rest of his build is the same. So even just those small changes gives you so much extra damage. Like I said, it's what it's 1 divine spent gives you 3 million DPS, which is honestly a really, really good investment. And that is, again, starting from scratch. Like I said, I did, you know, my first Shaper kill with a 4 link on level 18 gems, didn't even matter, and I was still shredding all the way up to spending 200 divines and getting 600 million DPS, which we do think is the highest Ice Spear DPS out there, probably in the game period, just because this is the highest damage Ice Spear's ever gotten, just because of the curse changes. So pretty cool. I think he was pretty excited about that, and I am excited for him. I think that's a super cool build. We did want to show that off and give you guys the juicy little tidbits so that maybe you guys can min-max some of y'all's builds as well. Last thing I guess I'll show you guys here is just the calculations, just so you can see there's no shenanigans going on. Are you always on low life? That is because of the belt. So you always will be on low life. Now this thing right here, large clusters, doesn't calculate 35% increase effect. Items, that is because of the cluster jewel here. So as you can see, it says 35% increased effect, but if you look at the passives, it actually doesn't work, which is kind of weird. It still only gives you 3%. It should be 4, and it should give you 16 cold. It only gives you 12. So what I went ahead and did was just throw that in the calculations. You're absolutely getting that damage. It just doesn't calculate right in POB. So yeah, I threw that there. We have 9 curses on you at all times. You should always spam your totems right before boss fight starts to get your 9 curses on you, so you should always have that. Of course, the enemy is going to be chilled. Of course, it's going to be exposed to cold, and it's always going to be unnerved as well from your gloves. And it is a pinnacle boss as well. yeah, so that is the build. 600 million for 200 divine spent, or 300 million for 100 divine spent. I'm super happy with the way this build turned out. If you guys are playing it, let me know how your experience has been. I know a lot of people complain about it's, you know, too squishy, which sure it is. It has a very small effective hit pool, 13,000. Obviously you see that and you're like, wow, bad build. But this is what I say to everybody, you know, it's a squishy build, yes, but it's also a very safe build, because when you're mapping and you're using freezing pulse, the projectile speed that we have is so much that it's literally going off the screen and freezing mobs off the screen if it's not just one-shotting them in the first place. So as long as you're doing the totem walk, which is, you know, walk a couple steps, throw some totems, walk a couple steps, throw some totems, you're never going to die. Unless you're doing crazy maps, you're literally never going to die, especially when you're doing boss farming, because all the bosses just instantly die anyway. So yeah, like I said, I think this is probably number 1 or number 2 top bossing builds right now. And it's a sleeper too. I don't think a lot of people are playing it, just because probably it's, I don't know, totems. People don't necessarily like totems. I think honestly the other reason is because it has such effective, low effective hit pool that I think that scares off people. But if you played it, you would honestly know that it's totally fine. It's so much damage and it's super safe. I mean, you're chilling, man. This has been one of the best builds I've played in a long time. So I wanted to get this out to you guys, and I hope you guys enjoyed. If y'all did, hit that like button. You'll have to forgive my voice a little bit. You guys might have heard me like kind of losing my breath a little bit. I did have COVID for a while, and I'm kind of recovering from that. So every once in a while I'm kind of like losing my breath. So it was a slight struggle to actually do this video, but I did want to get this out for you guys because the league's not winding down, but it's probably about, you know, relatively halfway through for most people. And it's around that point where I think a lot of people do want to min-max their builds. So I wanted to get this out for you guys as soon as possible. So hope you guys enjoyed, and I will catch you guys in the next one.